Hello, this is How To Bob, and this video I'm going to show you how to troubleshoot and repair your Stihl FS 80R string trimmer. This is a great running trimmer, but all of a sudden it's developed a problem. The problem is I can't get it to start, so put it on start, pump the primer bulb a few times, and then I can pull it forever and it will not start. So we're going to do a few things here. First thing I'm going to do is take off the cover. There's a screw in the back, and then we go around the front and remove the screw in the front, and that will allow us to take off the cover, exposing the engine. Now underneath on the ignition coil there are two wires. I'm going to remove the black coil which goes to the switch and then try to start it. So if it does not start, then that means the coil is probably bad, but I'm going to go ahead and test the switch. So I'm going to remove both wires. I'm going to get my meter here and set it to ohms. You can see I have it set to ohms here. And then I'm going to put a lead on each wire. Now once I've got a lead on each wire, I can go ahead and flip my start switch back and forth, and you'll notice that the meter will change. So my switch is good, so it's not my switch. So I'm going to do a few more tests just to show you what we can do to determine what the problem is. First I'm going to put the wires back where they came from, and then I'm going to check for spark, see if the actual spark plug is sparking. So I'll go ahead and remove the spark plug, and there's several different ways. I'll go through two of them, how to check to see if you're getting spark. The easiest way is to take your spark plug and put it in the boot. Make sure it's in there good and tight, and then ground the electrode on the engine block here, and then with the engine in start just pull, and I do not see any spark. Another way, I have an ignition tester here, and what that does is the spark jumps across, and it works pretty much the same. You clamp this onto the block, and then once it's on you pull or try to start the engine, and you can see there's no spark. So I think we've determined that it is in fact the ignition coil here. So I'm going to go ahead and take the ignition module or ignition coil off. There's two screws, one here and then there's one a little bit lower, and they're in there pretty tight as they should be. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those. And once the screws are out here, you kind of have to work around to get the ignition module or coil out. And you can see it's in fairly good shape, but doesn't mean that it's going to work. Now you can see the flywheel here. There's two magnets, and I'll get to that later. On the opposite side of the flywheel is a counterweight, and in between are some fins. So this is going to be important later on. Here's my new ignition module. You can see I got a Stihl original. It cost me just under $40. It looks the same, so we're going to go ahead and put it on, and you want to put the flywheel at a point where the fins are showing, and then put the little connector at the top. I put the fins there so that the little prong at the bottom can slide down just a little bit to fit the ignition module in. And I want to put this in kind of loose because I'm going to have to set the air gap between the ignition module and the flywheel. So I'm going to go ahead and put both screws in just a little bit snug, and then I'm going to get my feeler gauge. Now the recommendation for this Stihl is 12 thousandths. It's about the thickness of a business card. If you don't have a feeler gauge, I suppose you can use that, but I'd recommend using a feeler gauge. So you can see I'm going to rotate it around to where the magnets are on top, the flywheel, and then you can see it moves up and down a little bit. I want to make sure it's right above the magnets because that's the most critical point. Now I take my feeler gauge, again it's set at 12 thousandths, and slide it under. There's 2 points you want to gap here, so, and the magnets will help. They'll actually push it down onto the feeler gauge. Once I get that feeler gauge under there, I can go ahead and crank down my screw here, pull that out, and then I can do the other side here because it'll wobble back and forth. You see how it kind of tips back and forth. Put my feeler gauge in, and the magnet will hold it into place. Then I can crank my second bolt down. Once I get that tight, I'm going to go ahead and check the other side because it might have teetered a little bit. And it looks like it's pretty good. Let me check it here one more time. I'll loosen it up just to make sure. Okay, now I'm at 12 thousandths and tight. I want to check, make sure, and tighten it up all the way. So now we're satisfied that we're set at 12 thousandths, both of them. I want to make sure they're good and tight. Then, as a precaution, I'm going to rotate the flywheel all the way around. Make sure, positive, that it does not hit on the bottom of my ignition module or ignition coil. And it looks good. So next thing is to hook the wires up same way they came off, and I can put my spark plug back in. I want to start it by hand and then go to the socket wrench, and then I can put my spark plug wire back on, make sure that's seated real good. And now I'm going to give it a test start and see how it is. So turn it on start and give it a pull. And as you can see, it started right up. No problem. That was my issue. Ignition module, it runs great again. So now I'm going to put my cover back on, and I want to push the wire down because there's a channel right up in here for the spark plug wire, and it slides right back down. And put the screw in the front and tighten it up just a little bit. Doesn't have to be super tight. It's just holding the plastic cover on. And then I have the screw in the back to replace. So I get that tightened, I can go ahead and fire it up again. And this is how to replace the ignition module on your Stihl FS 80R. I'm How To Bob. Thanks for watching.